and then that's kind of where we're back to the story of all I wanted was hibachi. Yeah. So yes, earlier, yes, we did go to hibachi.
Good.
So another thing we should kind of talk about too is whenever we got out, it's one of those, we parked, of course, at the end of the parking lot. I think it was a rainy day. It was one of those. It took a couple hours to walk, 50 yards just because of like what just happened.
Yeah.
So we get in the car. I think we called Pastor Jed first.
Yes, we did.
He was like, "Hey, we got news or whatever," and because he's always worried about his his church people, but of course he's worried about us because he knew we had that day. So Chris called and told him, and I called Dad, and he was on his way to Warrenton to eat lunch with customers. So we're like, "Hey, what you doing?" And he told us, and he's like, "All right, we got to tell you something later." We didn't tell him, right?
I wanted to tell him later, but then he FaceTimed us
So
at the restaurant. He was at
Okay.
the restaurant.
So I couldn't remember. So we were probably like, "Hey,
Like,
how's your steak?" But listen to this, that
Yeah.
this, bad news. But anyway, and then we had people come over.
Yeah. Well, I also, when he finally got his hibachi, my Aunt Chrissy passed from leukemia 3 years ago. This July, right? It was 2021, I think. And so I called my uncle, and I was like, this is what happened. Like, I don't know what to do. And he prayed for me immediately. So it was kind of like, I hate that he had to go through that, but he was a comfort kind of to us at this time. But then, yeah, we kind of had the family just come to our house.
Yeah, so we could of course tell them everything. But anyway, and because you need family and time like that, or even I don't want to just say that, but even if you don't have family, like close Christian friends and stuff, do this. I don't want to say do the same for you, but it helps. Obviously, and that's kind of. I think we're gonna get into the community later, but I guess I'll kind of save that for later. But yeah, they all came over then, of course, told them the news and stuff. And it was, I always say, it's just so, it's one of those, it was so random.
Yeah.
It was like, when it happened, if I didn't pass out, I still wouldn't know. Like,
Jeez.
then, I wouldn't have probably that testimony yet. I don't know, we might not be sitting here. Like, it's hard to tell what all would be happening right now.
Well, and then I told Shane, like, whenever what
And we can
what
go
was
out of
our
order for this
reaction.
too, yeah.
I told him, like, it was, I feel like we didn't have much time to react though, because they were so, like, he went the next day to get a CT scan.
Wow.
Like, it was like boom, 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 boom. You meet with the surgeon, you schedule the surgery. Okay. And it was, I will say, like, it kind of was blow after blow, because, the doctor that did his colonoscopy said, I know this is at least stage 2. And we're like, not that cancer is good at all, but it's like, okay. But then when he had his surgery, they obviously removed his parts of him, his colon. But
16 inches, I think.
yeah, and it was like an 8-inch circumferential tumor.
Okay.
And it had actually, unfortunately, that's when we learned it had grown outside of his colon.
It
Right, and so she was like, the surgeon was great. She was like, but I'm pretty sure it got in the lymph nodes, but we'll have pathology back. And it was like a Saturday that it was like a random, she took her time out of her day and called us once the pathology came back and was like, okay, if we remove the tumor, the cancer wasn't in the lymph nodes, you're good. Like, you're not going to need chemo. But unfortunately, she removed like as many humanly possible lymph nodes that she could around, this section. And it was like 44 or something.
So it was, I think it was in the 40s.
And 8 came back positive for cancer. And we're like, oh, those are great odds.
Yeah.
It's my favorite number.
Right? And she was like, she said, no, that's really bad. And we were like, it was like all the air got let out of the balloon again. And And so she's like, you're going to meet with the oncologist and you're going to go ahead. We're going to have to do chemotherapy. And so that's when, he was diagnosed with the stage 3C. And so we go and meet with the chemo doctor. And, going into a place like that is scary. You see very sick people. It's heart-wrenching, but Shane is like a light. He just always has been, I think. So he was just a light to everyone, even his doctors. So, the way Shane kind of copes with things, he jokes, laughs. And so when the doctor met us, he was like, this is bad. With it getting in the lymph nodes, they couldn't tell if it had gotten anywhere else. So it's like we claim that it has not, and it won't pop up anywhere else, but just lymph nodes travel throughout your body, and it can be intimidating. So we got the chemo plan. It was 12 rounds of, he said, whatever we can give you without it killing you. It's got to be the strongest stuff. And they were warning us about all the side effects. We had to go to chemo teach. And, the doctor kind of brought it down to our level and was like kind of like, Shane, like, it's bad. He said, if you were older, you'd be okay. But since you're so young and you have this type of cancer, it's bad. And so it's like another blow. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay, God. Okay, God. Yeah. And then he's like, he knew that we were baseball people. And he's like, because Shane was like, okay, so how bad is this? Like, he was like, he kind of got a little serious and was like, so how bad is it? And he's like, well, think of like a bucket list. I know you like baseball. Have you seen all the stadiums?
Or how many have you seen?
How many have you seen? And I don't know what you said.
3. I was like, I've been to 3. He was like, I think you should go see them all. I was like,
do your bucket list while you can.
Like, who's paying for that trip, Doc?
Yeah.
But yeah, when he said that, it was like, oh, okay.
That was hard to hear.
And I don't think I love my oncologist and PA.
Oh my gosh.
So, but
I don't even know.
It's like he's assistant, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that's what he is. Yeah. But anyway, and they're awesome. They're awesome. So whenever he said that, like, he was straight up with us. He's straight up with his people. So whenever he said that, then it was like, all right, like, obviously it's serious.
Yeah.
But he's telling me because I need to get through this chemo, because it was one of those things like, all right, here's your 2 options for chemo. You do all 12 rounds, or you do all 12 rounds.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah. And so that was I guess him motivating me, like, you need to do all 12 rounds.
And it was hard. Shane was a trooper through it. There are times that you probably wouldn't even know that he was going through the chemo, but like with those warnings and, the percentages and, the so many years, like it does a number to you, I think, mentally. Yeah. Of course, Shane was like I said, a trooper through it all. But there were some low points with chemo for sure. But his doctors were incredibly supportive and encouraging.
That's awesome.
So there was, like she said, low points, and there was high points. High points, I turkey hunted the whole season.
There you go.
I remember, so with my father-in-law, like, every time I went, I was with my father-in-law. So, like, I loved that bonding. I love, like, hunting with him. That's like one of our bonds, I think. The joke around with all of us brother-in-laws are, there's top 4 list.
Yeah.
And I was trying to make my way to the number 1. Like, so that, I went through that so I could sneak in number 1.
Yeah.
But anyway, so then I got to hunt a lot of places that I've never got to before, just because work and stuff. Another thing with community, the people I got to go with, it was people I've known forever too, and I finally had time to get to do it, and they're gracious enough to actually take me. Going off of that, so last year I killed my first turkey.
Okay. Congratulations.
Yeah, it was like like what hunter has been turkey hunting for years and they're just now killing their first turkey? Me. That was me.
That's okay.
Oh, and I loved it. Anyway, so that was one of those high points.
Yeah.
But what were you gonna say? Oh, yeah. So I'll talk about the high points first, and then we'll go, I guess, to the low points.
Yeah.
Just so I can kind of like, I guess, share my heart, because as a man, it's hard for me to do that. So I'm gonna just do it on the air.
Yeah. Good for you.
Well,
good for
He's
you.
never even done that with me.
No,
Like, what?
but so anyway, of course, I was off work,
Yeah.
and we were expecting one of our best friends to come over. One of Morgan's best friends, one of her bridesmaids from college, which she was in Charlotte. Yeah, she was in Charlotte at that time. So we were expecting her to come up and stay. She said she didn't come, like, stay with us. So I just laid down to take a nap, and Morgan was on the back deck. So there's just two of us at the house then. Yeah, because Rika's in school or something. But anyway, and I'm like about to fall asleep, and the light hits on, and I roll over, and I guess I was asleep because I was kind of like, like squinty eyed looking around, and I saw someone standing there and he had a beard, and I was thinking, like, Morgan doesn't have a beard. Like that's
Good observation.
That's like who should be standing there.
Yeah.
There's only two of us. It's like, and it was one of my best friends from college, like one of my roommates.
Oh, cool.
And he's from Dallas.
Okay.
So yeah, he's standing there. I'm like, what are you doing here? Like, you're not supposed to be here. So obviously we got out of bed and hugged him and stuff. It was like awesome. I love getting to see him.
That's so cool.
Sometimes once a year.
Yeah.
Anyway, so. And I think Zytel was coming up. Yeah, my other best friend from college. He played third base for us. Anyway, he was coming up too. Yeah. So it was like, all three of us kind of back together again.
Yeah.
So of course, it was kind of emotional, to be honest, because they were Ripken's aunt uncles in college and still are.
Oh yeah.
Ripken had the coolest childhood growing up at WVU with the baseball team, and all those guys going to the games. Of course, the coaches were incredible to us, but like just that bond that he had with those people, and then just to kind of see him loving on Shane.
Yeah, and seeing college men like being little kids with a little kid kind of thing. It's kind of funny.
Yeah,
it's
cool.
like kind of warms your heart when you see it. Like someone kind of break down and be a kid again. Anyway, so those three were there, and then the next day, I think it was, I see a car pull up outside the big window, and I like recognized the car, and so I go outside. I'm like, "What's going on?" I go outside, and it was three of our other best friends from college, so that we stayed in towers with.
Oh yes, good old towers.
Yes, so they were in two of the three were in the wedding. Right, right. Joe was there. He was late, but he was there. It's so funny, hilarious story. But anyway, said, "Oh, like what's going on?" So Joe lives near Philly, in New Jersey, and the other two lived out out in the city in Virginia. So like we all lived like hours apart. I'm like, "What is going on? Like this is awesome." Well, Sarah kind of planned it all. Yeah. Sarah's a planner. Yeah, so she like planned it all. So it was awesome. It was like. It was definitely a highlight to have everyone together because I would have never thought, to be honest, we'd all be together again. So that was one of those things. I was kind of giving a testimony at church. Morgan and I were, and I started talking about that. And I could not talk anymore. Like I was stopped at, my friends were over, and like that was about it. I was like choked up and stuff, and Morgan had to keep talking.
Yeah, it was emotional because we didn't really share everything with everybody about Shane's diagnosis. Like I don't know if we've ever even said stage 3. Like it, we didn't share everything with everyone. And I didn't want my friend Sarah unfortunately lost her dad just a few years earlier. So it's like I don't want to burden people with that. And so we kind of had time to sit down and talk with them and kind of say, guys, this is the diagnosis. And it was heart-wrenching because they love Shane and we got to see that in action. But I told them, we know God and we know that God's going to heal Shane. But even if he doesn't, guys, you have to know, I know Shane's going to heaven. Like, I know the relationship that he has with God. I know, his heart. And, I want you guys to have that too. So it was a door that was open that I could never talk to them about that in college. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't brave enough. Honestly, I wasn't brave enough, in college. Choices that we made, like, we're in bit, and I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, I just didn't. It's unfortunate, but I just didn't have, the faith or the guts to do it. But going through this, again, it's unfortunate you were a trooper, but a door opened for us to kind of share our faith with our friends that we really kind of never did.
How did they react?
They were sad.
I wasn't there. I was outside doing something.
Sarah told me, like, I think it's better if you talk to the boys.
Okay.
We call them the boys like they're our kids. And so, it was upsetting.
Mm-hmm.
It hurt them, but it was new for them. It wasn't as fresh for me. But I think they took it really well. Like I said, we got to show them our hope in Christ. And awesome. Not that we're great at all. Dear Lord knows I'm not perfect. I mess up all the time. But, like, they got to see us be happy even at some of the worst times of our life. That we still had joy. And, we got to let them know where that joy is found. So that was it was cool.
That's really important awesome. Thing when you're going through something bad, whatever that is. It could be obviously it could be cancer, it could be something, your dog ran away. It's like right now is the worst thing that's happened to you. Not everyone's worst thing is the same,
right?
But it's still somebody's worst thing. So as a Christian, we kind of really have to cling on to and hold on to, if we're going to say we're a Christian on Facebook, when this stuff happens, you're going to be a Christian when this stuff happens. We were talking, so we were in Potomac School of Ministry right now, kind of finishing up our credentials.
Very cool.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
We have one more class.
One more class.
And we were going through it last year, year before. Whatever.
When you were diagnosed.
So whatever it was, and we kind of had to put it on hold. And we had 2 classes left.
Oh wow.
And we were going through it, but then it just got where it was tough. But anyway, and we were talking to one of the teachers there. We got to actually meet him in person at a Next Gen conference, which was all youth leaders and children's pastors. So it was like,
that's so cool.
It was like directed towards us.
Yeah,
it was awesome. So anyway, and we got to meet him there, and that was one of the things we said. It's like, that was the time to, like, walk the walk. Like, this is the time to walk the walk. Like, anyone could be on Facebook, but man, you know how the devil works. Facebook, you're a praise warrior, and then when someone sees you out doing stuff that's not really godly, it's like, man, why are they being like that? They're supposed to be Christians. So I guess our goal is obviously to always, act like a Christian if we're going to say we're walk Christians. Which times like this, it's hard to do, and that's when you need. I want to get back to community because I know we'll get to it, but that's when you need people to surround yourself with good, Christian people or good people. Absolutely. And try to spread the faith. So one of the hardest things is when someone keeps you accountable. That's when you're like, I was like, all right, I don't like hanging out with them because I know they're not going to want me to drink. Like, they're going to call me out. But that's kind of the person you need to be around. To where you're not you're not doing that. Obviously there's 50 other examples of how someone keep you accountable. And that is one thing that I wanted to say. It might have been one of the questions, but I think, we kind of told our story how we met. So one thing I didn't say was whenever we met, I didn't go to church, like, ever.
Yeah.
I believed in God, I didn't really go to church.
That's the kind of story too.
Yeah. So I guess I could say Morgan's the reason I went to church, because I was dating her. So on Sundays, we hang out more. But it was so interesting. Like, it's still honestly so interesting when Pastor Jed talks and he's like telling a story out of the Bible or saying stuff out of the Bible. Like, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Like, it is still interesting. And, it's like, I love having, obviously, Morgan as a spouse, but she keeps me accountable. Like, calls me out of, when's the last time you read your Bible?
We had to say
ouch.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
yeah.
That's that's kind of the walk, you know,
Yeah.
behind closed doors, I guess. Anyway, I don't keep going down a rabbit hole, but
No, but
No,
like
that's great.
community, since we're on high points right now, we'll do this before you get to low points, because I'm very interested in what you're gonna say, because
Yeah.
not that he hasn't dealt with it, but like we've never talked like this about it, just because kids, and that was a whole other ball game on how to tell them. I read lots of books about it, and prayed really hard on how to explain things to, especially Ripken. But the community, oh my goodness, and like people just pouring wisdom into us, people that had gone through a very similar journey, I think, of last year at this time, Mr. McCrory, Michael McCrory, Sherry McCrory and Michael both were there for us. They gave us things for Shane to use during chemo, and certain things to help with his diet, and unfortunately Mr. McCrory lost his battle to cancer, but ultimately won. But I just think about how people in the community, like, Sherry, Michael are going through their own thing. People are going through their own things. And, for them to take time out of their day, people raising money for us, because that's a worry,
Absolutely.
I didn't want Shane to have to worry about how to pay bills. And I can tell you, I know that Hampshire County people might think that we're like some country bumpkins, but good gravy. They came together. I know the hospital and at Romney came together. Valley Health, actually, they made it a whole Valley Health thing, and they paid our mortgage the whole time that Shane was in treatment.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
That's
so
amazing.
it was a huge blessing, and just to see people come together the way that they did. For
God provides in crazy ways. Yeah.
And I love our county. I appreciate our county, our church family. Just our families. His parents, I couldn't imagine. My heart broke for his mom all the time, because this is her baby. I don't care how old he is. But they were troopers through it and helped us so much through it. It just
awesome.
it was awesome to see the community come together. The WVU baseball community come together. Unfortunately, Shane has some teammates that have had cancer. And then one that he would like throw with, that played with the Baltimore Orioles, that he's still fighting his journey.
He's friends with his wife.
Yes. And he's still in his journey. But just people reaching out, it's incredible. I mean, the community that we had behind us. I know God got us through it, but he sent people. Like it was just incredible. Definitely a high point.
There's so many. So it's always hard to to listing people, because you would miss a lot of people. There were so many people like involved, and so they did like an auction for us, and people donating stuff, like just spending their money on
and getting nothing
on a
in
nobody.
return.
Yeah.
So well,
kind of.
So I delete that. I'm just kidding. I don't care. But anyway, so there's one gentleman that I would like randomly call to check on and stuff, and very wise gentleman. And when all that was going on, so as a man, I'm too humble to take handouts, and I tell him that. And his words back to me were, because him and his wife kind of went through a thing too, and he was like, he said, I mean, I was the same way. But he said, how do you feel when you give someone something? He said, don't take people's joy away. And that was, I was like, oh man, that's like so true. I've never thought of it like that. It's so true, I don't want to be weak and need people. I don't need people's money. In all reality, like obviously we did. But anyway, and getting off that phone call, I was like, wow, that was like, just something as simple as that I didn't think about. But he's very wise, wise Christian. I was like, man, that's good. Because it is fun. Like, you do have joy giving somebody something and not expecting anything in return. Seeing them like, oh, seriously? Something like that. Yeah, that was definitely us. Though. It was like we don't deserve it.
Yeah.
But we greatly appreciate it.
Yeah.
Through all that. But yeah, small town community. I mean, they're
Can't beat it.
No, it can't beat it.
Yeah.
And like she said, church. Going off with community. So we had a lady at church that just went through what I went through.
Wow.
Colon cancer too.
Yeah, like literally just went through it. Like was finishing up when I was starting my stuff.
Yeah.
So and I, on the stage talking about it, I would say I don't know the reason you went through it. Maybe I'm the reason you went through it.
Wow.
Because she, every Sunday when I was there, it was, how you feeling? I'm feeling like this. All right, I did too. This will help.
Wow.
Or, okay, get ready for this. This might be coming up soon. This might happen soon. Be ready.
Yeah.
Try this. This will help.
Yeah.
So it was like, it might not seem like the funnest thing to do right there, of course, but it's,
yeah.
You didn't think it would hit home in your own church though either. And that's what I was saying earlier about the the bench in the mall. Maybe that's something will happen where I could kind of help. In that moment, or the last year was kind of, I guess, her opportunity to help me, and she did.
Yeah, and I want to pause right there. Just, I feel like ever since COVID, like a lot of churches are online, so people think, okay, well, we can just listen to church while we're driving and running our errands, or just do it from home. But like being a part of a local church community is like that. The Bible does say to not to neglect to meet together, right? As some do, and that it's easier to just do it on your own or whatever, but that's not what builds our faith. That's not what we're called to do. So yeah. I just want to encourage people, like, we're all going to go through really hard times, and having that church community, like, I don't know what I'd do without our community. So
and that's something, I'm glad you said that, because I was watching, there's a Facebook video, this guy that I always watch, like super smart, like when it comes to the Bible and stuff, and he'll like preach on campus and like kind of test the kids, like ask whatever you want.
Yeah.
And I'll try to answer it what the Bible says. And that was one of the things, people are saying, like, we don't need to go to church. So what his thing was, it was, you wake up and go to church. Like, you get up when you don't have to. You can sleep in. You go to church when you don't have to, when you can stay home. But you're showing God that you're making the effort to go to his house.
Yeah.
To learn more about him when you could stay home. And some people, like, it's safer, it might be safer for them to stay home with whatever illness or something, flu going around like that. But he said that, I was like, yeah, that's always been like an argument with, like an unsaved person that I know. And that was his thing, was, I don't have to go to church to like be saved and stuff. It's like, well, it's not always, I guess, about that kind of answer. Yeah. But it's, you're giving that effort and showing God you're giving that effort to, to go there. Or, when new Christians, when they think it'll be easy and it's not, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But also when you're a new Christian, you're like, God, okay, send me out, I'll do whatever. Be ready for God to test you. Be like, all right, let's go to South Asia.
Yeah.
And you're like, are you sure?
Yeah, exactly.
So that is, so I've always wanted to kind of say that, especially like on a microphone, because it's kind of fun to test people, when like right now, you watching this at home, think to yourself, if God would test me, would I do it? Because I mean, be honest with you, would I do it?
Yeah.
It's tough questions.
Hard,
It is hard questions, but obviously, prayer and all that, kind of goes into it. But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes, like, the Bible says he'll give us like the peace that surpasses all understanding. But yet sometimes we have to step out in fear, right? I think about, what is it, Peter that stepped off of the boat and he was like, okay, walk to me. And he was like walking to Jesus, and then he took his eyes off of Jesus and he started to sink. And like, how often do we do that in our lives? We take our eyes off of Christ into more worldly things, and then we feel like we're sinking. And we could go into like idols and stuff like that. And I used to think, like, I don't worship like a golden calf or anything, I don't have idols, but it's anything. I always challenge like the teens that I lead. I'm like, what do you wake up thinking about in the morning? What consumes most of your thoughts? Like, that could easily be an idol in your life. And you're supposed to, the first commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And then the second is just like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. So when it goes back to like going to church and prioritizing that, if we let, the comfort of our home or not wanting to miss part of the football game on Sunday or whatever be a priority over like going into God's house and worshiping him and like spending that time getting poured into. I always tell moms, like, we pour out a lot, like moms and dads both, like we pour out a lot. Just like go have your kids go to nursery if they will, like Aiden usually lasts 10 minutes and then he comes back out, but like go and just be poured into during that time.
And kind of glad you said that. As in, like fear taking your eyes off him. So if you pray kind of to be fearless, not that God's going to be like, all right, bam, and now you're never scared of anything. He's going to put you in a situation to where it's scary, and you're, all right, God, like, get me out of this, or whatever, or, make me stronger. He's going to put you in a situation to where, you have cancer. Now you got to, I'm using that because of me, but whatever the situation is, we got stronger out of that.
I think I can definitely tell you that there were times that felt hopeless, going to kind of the lows of it. I had to give Shane shots after his surgery in his belly. That was so hard for me because I don't mind needles. Like, obviously I have tattoos, but I don't mind needles at all. But for me having to hurt him, but to help him, like there were just times that I got really low and then I had to learn how to de-access his port. And that wasn't always the most fun for him, just things that I was really selfish about. Like me explaining it. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I, kind of was with Leia and Ripken a lot. Things with chemo, you normally don't know. They couldn't be around him. They couldn't touch things that he touched. Like, just things that I would get into this place where it's like, it's all on me. The pressure's all on me. Like, I'm having to do everything and no one understands what I'm going through. And like, there were just times that I took my eyes off of God and I was literally being so selfish in those moments because, I was just thinking all about myself. I wasn't thinking about God, I wasn't praising and worshiping him, through these storms and stuff. And that is when I felt my lowest. Like I told Shane, I said, I felt low before. Unfortunately, when we lost my pap, a lot of people don't know this, but I had to pull him out from under the car and do CPR, and he didn't make it, and I struggled with that for a long time, a very long time. But I'll never forget, a really good Christian woman told me after it had happened, and I had Ripken. So he was one. He wasn't, he was one. But it was hard for me to kind of be a mom at that moment, because it was just a few days after, and I was trying to deal with kind of like the trauma of everything that had happened. And she said, do not let this keep you from the woman God has planned you to be. Because I think that was Satan trying to steal that away from me. And so I could feel myself getting into that self-pity, anxiety, fearful, mindset at times. And it's like, I had to tell myself, you got to buck up. This is not about, it's not about you. And, a famous saying my pap always said was, you got to stay humble. Stay humble. And I kept trying to tell myself, like, it's not about me. This whole thing, it's not about poor Morgan. It's not about what all I had to do. It's not about, my husband's, this or that. That's not what it's about. And I'm telling you, whenever I started thinking that way, that is when it was like, it took everything in me just to get up in the mornings. But then whenever I would try to flip my perspective, and praise God through things, that's when I felt peace about it. So it's definitely important to keep your focus on God, because you can lose it. It's pretty easy, I think, to lose it. But definitely fight for it.
Yes. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this first episode with Shane and Morgan Ennis. Truly, to know them is to love them. The next episode we are going to release next week of a part 2, and Shane really opens up and processes in real time for the first time about how he kind of dealt with a lot of things. So we're super thankful that he was just open and honest and vulnerable. And I'm just so excited for you guys to hear the rest of their story of how God moved and worked in and through their lives. So make sure to like the podcast, follow it, rate and review it so that others can find it and share it with a friend. Look forward to seeing you guys next week.